Hey, what's going on guys? It's this kid and we're going to talk about the Enhancement Shaman Mage Tower. We have a couple things to go over, but before we do anything, we'll go over talents here. So for talents, they're going to look pretty much the same every single time. You're going to choose Elemental Blast, Storm Flurry, and then the level 30 row is going to be pretty much up to you. I chose Earth Shield just in case, but Static Charge and Spirit Wolf are also pretty good in this fight. Elemental Assault is what you're going to choose for 35. Nature's Guardian is going to be very important for just keeping you alive if you fall below a certain percent. Sundering is just going to be the best in the 45 row. And then in the last row, I chose Elemental Spirit, but Ascendance is also really good for some quick burst. You'll have the option to do it, I think, twice in this fight, maybe 3 times, but it is pretty good. I just chose Elemental Spirits just for that more consistent damage. So as far as gear goes, I didn't really do too much there. I got some 226 items from Zereth Mortis because I didn't have any enhancement gear. And just from there I went in, I think I had a flask and 1 more consumable. But besides that, I didn't really do too much with gear or consumables in this fight. One thing I did do though is I definitely got enchants for my gear. So with my boots I got agility, with my chest I got stats, and then with my rings I got haste on both of them. Also with the weapons I got celestial guidance on the main hand and sinful revelation on the offhand. So even though I didn't have the best gear, the best consumables, all the best stats and everything, what I did have is a pretty good knowledge of the fight and the mechanics in general, and I think that's the most important part. As long as you're dodging these mechanics and you're not getting one shot by them, you should be able to just DPS consistently and do enough damage to get through the fight. So now let's get into some of these mechanics and pretty much go through what happens throughout the fight. So throughout the whole fight, you're going to be fighting 3 people. You're going to be fighting Sigrun in the middle. You're going to be fighting the person on the left that I'll call Hunter, and then the person on the right that I'll call Mage. Each of these 3 people have different abilities and different mechanics that you're going to need to watch out for and take care of throughout the fight. So we'll go over the Hunters first because that's the first one that we're going to see. The Hunter is going to have 2 major abilities aside from just throwing axes around the room, which he's going to do all the time. The first one is going to be he's going to get a little bit bigger and his hands are going to light on fire and he's going to chase after you. You cannot tank this damage, but you can tank it for a little bit. So what you want to do is you want to try and get him slowed or stunned or anything like that really, but you want to get away from him as long as possible, while DPSing the others as much as possible. You can also throw Earth Ellie on him, and we're going to do that for the first one actually, but that's pretty much how you deal with that. You just run away as much as possible. The next thing that he's going to do is he's going to do a Blade Storm, and the Blade Storm does the same thing that normal Blade Storms do. If you get too close, it just does damage to you. It's also going to drag you in though, so you can either run away from it because you are fast enough to run away, or you can stun him while he's doing it, and this will stop it completely. Your cap totem cooldown is short enough to deal with this every time it's up, and you won't really need it for anything else, but you can use it on other things as well if you'd like. For example, if he gets bigger and he starts chasing you, you can use cap totem at that time as well, and you should have enough time to still use it on the Blade Storm, but that's really up to you. If you think you can just run away as well, totally fine. Okay, so just going from left to right, we'll go to Sigrun now. Sigrun is going to have 3 major abilities, 1 more than the Hunter and the Mage. The main one is going to be Flames of the Father, and that's going to be where she charges up an ability, and then she gains a buff, and with the buff, every few seconds she does an AoE. That AoE does a ton of damage, so what you want to do is you want to hex her either right before she finishes casting, which is perfect, or even a little bit after she completes her cast and she has that buff. If she's hexed, it won't hit you. I will just say here, make sure no AoE hits her and Flame Shock is not on her. Be very careful of this. This is probably one of the only reasons I wiped in the last probably 10 tries or so. I messed something up. Either Lava Lash hit her by mistake and got her out of Hex, or she already had Flame Shock on her at the wrong time. Just really try to be careful while she's in that Hex. The next thing that Sigrun is going to do is she's going to throw spears at the ground, and the ground is going to create a Fel Puddle. The Fel Puddle does a decent amount of damage. It's not going to kill you instantly, but you still don't want to be standing in it, so pretty much just avoid those and you should be okay. So Sigrun's last ability is going to be summoning Valkyr. She's going to summon a line of Valkyr across the map, and then they're going to rush to the other side. but there will be a hole in between them. So if you're in between that hole, you do not die, but if you get hit by the Valkyr, you're going to get one shot and that's the end of it. Because of this, you want to try and tank everyone in the middle. The reason for that is sometimes there's going to be a hole in the Valkyr on the opposite side of where you're at, and at that point you literally cannot run fast enough to get to that hole. What you want to do is tank him in the middle so that you have an equal amount of time to get to either side of the map that the hole is on. And so next we'll go over the mage. The mage is going to have two abilities, and the first one is going to be that he's going to place 3 runes on the ground. And slowly over time they'll get smaller and smaller. If they get too small, they're going to explode and one-shot you. So what you want to do is just run over these. There's going to be one that's the smallest and one that's the biggest. Try and take care of the one that's the smallest the first. But if you are trying to avoid the Valkyr and you need to stand in a certain spot, you can prioritize the bigger ones that they're closer to you and then run over to the smaller one as fast as possible. The next ability is going to be the Mage's Bubble, and what you need to do for this is pretty much just DPS as much as possible into that bubble, and then once it's off you can see that you can interrupt the spell, and then at that point wind shear and just get rid of that as soon as possible. That bubble is going to be the main DPS check here, so if you don't get that bubble off fast enough, eventually if he gets the cast off it is going to one-shot you, so you want to do as much damage into that as fast as possible and interrupt that spell as soon as you can. So those are all the mechanics, and now we're going to talk about which ones have priority over the others, because these are going to all happen kind of at the same time at certain points. So we need to talk about what we do at certain times and what we kind of can ignore. First thing is going to be Sigrun's Flames of the Father. That is going to be needed to be hexed as soon as possible, but the main thing that you want to worry about is going to be those Valkyr. Those are going to be a very, very quick one-shot if you don't avoid those. So get out of the way of those and then hex Sigrun and then move on to everything else from there. The next thing that is going to take precedence is going to be the runes. The runes are going to be a very, very fast one-shot as well. So you want to take care of those after the Flames of the Father and after you've already dodged those Valkyr. You want to take care of the runes and then from there take care of the Mage's Bubble and then take care of anything that the Hunter has to offer. Fortunately, all of these things aren't happening at the exact same time, but there is going to be a point, I think probably about halfway through the fight, where for about 30 seconds, you're only going to be running away from stuff and taking care of mechanics, and you're not even going to be DPSing because you pretty much die or it's impossible to do damage. So the last thing that I wanted to do here is just give a quick rundown of the fight and kind of what to do and get you guys past maybe the first 20-30%, and then from there it's kind of hard to predict, so you just need to pay attention to some of those mechanics. Make sure at a certain point if you have to dodge, just ignore doing damage for now. But the first 20-30% is pretty straightforward, so I will go through that with you guys. So the first minute or two of the fight pretty much goes like this every time. You're going to go in with Lightning Shield and Wind Fury weapon, and then you're also going to drop Wind Fury Totem before you even touch Sigrun. Once the fight starts, you Flame Shock Sigrun, interrupt the Mage, and use Earth Ellie on the Hunter. The Earth Ellie is going to completely take care of the first ability from the Hunter, his Enrage. So pretty much you just do as much damage as possible until the runes spawn. There's going to be 2 sets of runes, and when they spawn you want to stop using Flame Shock on Sigrun. Right after these runes she's going to use Flames of the Father, and you're going to want to be hexing that, so do as much as you can to not get Flame Shock on her. Don't even use Lava Lash near her. Pretty much just try to use single target kind of stuff until then. After the runes are over, make sure to hex Sigrun, and there shouldn't be any dots or anything on her, so you can now move on to DPSing the Mage. At that point, just leave Sigrun in that hex for as long as possible and do as much damage as you can to the Mage. She's going to eventually use a bubble, and you want to DPS as much as possible through that bubble and eventually interrupt her after that. Then at this point, the abilities start stacking up on each other, so all you want to do is make sure you're taking care of the mechanics in the proper order. So make sure to hex the Flames of the Father first, and then dodge the Valkyr, and then after that, make sure to take care of the runes. From there, you can pretty much just do whatever you want, just make sure you're killing that bubble and interrupting. and then eventually running away or stunning the hunter. And then eventually, like I said, halfway through the fight, there's going to be so many abilities at once that all you can really do is just focus on not doing damage and just dodging these mechanics. If you do that, you should be good right after that, where there's a period where there's really no abilities cast because they were all just used. And at that point, you want to pump as much damage as possible into all of them at once. Try to stack them up. But again, you don't want to get Flame Shock on Sigrun because randomly she will use that Flames of the Father every minute or so. So you want to be sure to hex that and kind of run away from Sigrun for the most part throughout the fight. Interrupt the mage and kind of drag him towards the hunter and then DPS both of them together. But that's about it. Try and use Healing Surge only when you have the full stacks of Maelstrom weapon and you can do it instantly. Also, something that I did not mention up to this point is that randomly Valkyrie are going to come in and drop some golden orbs on the ground. Get those as soon as possible if you have the opportunity. It's going to heal you up to almost full, not exactly full, but it's going to help a lot throughout the fight. You don't need to save them or anything, but just keep grabbing those whenever they're available. But after that, you should be good. Hopefully you get your transmog and maybe your book mount at this point. For the most part, just good luck. And work on your rotation as much as possible and just pump as much damage into them as you can. Try to watch the video closely and see what I do. But yeah, besides that, good luck and have a good rest of your day. Thank you.